Good evening from Agora studio in European Parliament in Brussels. I am Borjan Jovanovski.
And I'm Ivana Dragicevic. For 10 years now, Macedonia is stuck in the European integration limbo. Since 2005, it's a candidate country with 6 consecutive recommendations to start negotiations on membership.
EU's encouragement of the reform processes instead of democratization brought the crash of the state of rule of law and democratic institution, which was explicitly illustrated in the publication of thousands of wiretap files. This imposed a special engagement of the EU and US in Macedonia again. Today, the country is in its deepest political crisis since independence, also faced with the pressure of the pan-European refugee crisis.
So how the EU failed in the case of Macedonia, and has the enlargement process lost the momentum to become a transformative power for change in that country? We are talking today with Mr. Ivo Vajgel, Rapporteur of European Parliament for Macedonia. Welcome to our program. Mr. Edward Kukkan, Member of Parliament from EPP, part together with Mr. Vajgel of so-called EU Parliament Troika, engaged to solve the political crisis in recent months in Macedonia. Welcome to our program. And Mr. Nikola Dimitrov, former Macedonian ambassador in the US and now the member of the Global Institute in The Hague. Thank you and welcome to our program. So you said that in 2001 and the civil war in Macedonia, and with the Ohrid Agreement, the EU played a crucial, critical, good role in Macedonia. So what happened today?
In the words of Stefan Lehne of Carnegie Europe, EU has its worst record in the country where it made its biggest success in terms of conflict management. In 2001, the EU worked very closely with NATO, and with the help of our late President Trajkovski, averted a civil war and created the Ohrid Framework Agreement as a basis for a new kind of inter-ethnic relations. 10 years ago, Macedonia was a front-runner in the reform process, definitely among the front-runners. Today, it is difficult to stop the country to move backwards on virtually every single political criteria when we talk about the Copenhagen criteria, be it the state of its democracy, independence of its judiciary, the freedom of the media. It is not fair to blame the context for this only, but I firmly believe that the bloc that Greece has put forward to stop Macedonia in moving towards Europe took out the incentives from the Macedonian political dynamics out and created a sense of disillusionment with the European Union. So in that situation of a limbo, we are now facing the deepest, and I try not to call it a political crisis because I think this is a very deep institutional, it is basically a failure of democracy in Macedonia. The EU stepped in last year with the help of the 3 MEPs and Commissioner Harmon himself. The EU brokered the so-called Pershino Agreement that in some ways tries to create some nascent mechanisms to provide for accountability, both political and legal, and to level the playing field for elections. The old system, however, and we are seeing that increasingly, fights back. To me, the most striking example is the initiative before the Constitutional Court that in the midst of all the negotiations about how to create the preconditions for free and fair elections, 3 weeks after the special prosecutor started an investigation targeting former ministers in government for electoral fraud, the Constitutional Court is now discussing whether it should enable the president to pardon for crimes against elections. It is shameless.
Mr. Vajgel, Mr. Kukkan, you were recently in Macedonia as a part of the delegation of the European Parliament to help facilitate the agreement between the party. You failed. What was the reason? Why you were not able to achieve a consensus between the political party for some agreement about the election?
May I start? I will be brief. Let me mention one thing concerning your statement, which I fully agree. and I share the feelings of Macedonians and Macedonian leaders to be a candidate country for such a long time, and after more than 7 years didn't get the date for starting the negotiations. You are right, it was a big mistake of the European Union. In that connection, I wanted to mention that the European Parliament every year adopted a resolution in which recommended the European Council to start and to give the date. So I would not include the European Parliament into the European institutions which share the responsibility. We share the responsibility for that. Even in this year's report, there is the recommendation, but with big conditionality. After the fair democratic elections on the 5th of June, we would recommend the Council to start the accession negotiations. So I think it should be mentioned to be fair to all the European institutions. Concerning your question, I don't think that we failed. The agreement was taken in the parliament to postpone the elections. Yes, it's a pity that it was not the agreement of all parties, because we were very close and it was a missed opportunity. I can confirm that. But the process is going on in a very difficult way with many problems, delays, everything. But until now, all four political parties are working in order to prepare the credible elections on the 5th of June. As far as I know, leader of the opposition, Zaev, still said that they are going to participate in the elections. Let's see what kind of situation is there before the election. But now I think that it's the responsibility, very big responsibility for all the politicians in Macedonia, for the international community, for the European Union to work on the situation which would start taking out the country of this crisis which is there for too long time.
Mr. Vajgel, the same question about the success or failure of your mission.
Well, I don't think that it is relevant to speak about whether or not we failed or we succeeded. So I'm not a narcissist in the politics, so I think we achieved what was achievable. And of course, we were all the time dependent on how far the readiness of the political parties and their leaders is reaching. Do they really want to change the trend in the country? Do they want to have a genuine democracy based upon the principles which the countries who are candidates have to negotiate and have to agree upon? Negotiations are actually not negotiations in the real sense of the word, but it is more to accept, to accommodate yourself with the values of the integration where you want to join. I have the feeling that this consensus in Macedonia has not been achieved, and this is the major problem for the country at these particular moments. I think that the experience of all other countries, new member countries, should teach Macedonian politicians something. In all the countries who were joining European Union in the past decade, there was, as a basis, there was a joint committee of all political parties who were working on enlargement as a joint process, and they got also behind them also the public opinion. In Macedonia, they did not do so far. But I'm not so pessimistic as you are, and I would say Macedonia still have all chances.
Pessimistic or optimistic?
Well, you made a very pessimistic statement, not the first time, and
about the role of the EU.
I don't like it that way. You know, the situation is complicated. We are speaking about a country which is per se a complicated multinational country with difficult neighborhood and open questions with all the neighbors who don't support the European path of Macedonia. And we have also been not very, very helpful. We, I think, European Union and NATO as such. So I am not pessimistic. I still think the process is going on. Let's wait for the election. Let's see how these elections will be judged by many observers. There will be a huge presence of international community before and during the election.
We have started to talk about the credibility of the EU and the credibility of the enlargement process and its transformative power to make changes in some society. We are talking right now about Macedonia. Have you read the Pribe report?
Sure, I did.
Yes.
Sure, I did. And I'm saying what Pribe was saying. There are a lot of things which should have been changed in Macedonia so far. But let's see how Europe, we have to see the Macedonia also in the broader context of what's happening in Europe. And I think there are some countries who are by far a reason for concern, for a bigger concern than Macedonia is. I think Macedonia needs assistance, needs to be assisted, needs to be understood, and our criteria should not, we should not give the rabat to the problems which are so obvious. It is a kind of authoritarian government. There are many points where the human rights are questioned, and the media situation is, I would say, critical. Media are not in the situation to play their normal role in a democratic process because they are under the political pressure. There are many things which should be improved, but I would say there is still some time, and we bought some time also with the postponement of the election. Not too much, but still something.
Mr. Kukan, your political option, EPP, supported Prime Minister Gruevski for a long time. Do you think that you are, maybe it's too hard to say to blame, but maybe you should do something inside your group before that? What do you think about that kind of responsibility, leaving him to rule in that way, to have the situation as Mr. Vajgel just mentioned?
Well, I can assure you that EPP is speaking all the time with the Prime Minister and the Vumro Party, our colleagues, to do their responsibility in order to find the democratic solution to get out of this crisis. Let's call it crisis. They are always under pressure to keep the dialogue with the opposition, to look for the compromise which will be good for the country. They should rectify many issues which were prevailing in the work of the government so far. And in those discussions, we really use the plain language, and I think they understand us. It is the same role which we are playing now, that country needs the solution, and for the solution which would be the compromise of all political players, and which should be shown in the free democratic elections. They know, and I think everybody knows what is expected from them, the voter register, the reforms in the media, all these issues. So far there was no agreement, but I think there is still some time. We cannot expect miracles, but I think that those issues are complicated, but there is possibility to achieve progress. Even now, when I understand the working group is no longer holding meetings, I heard that there is a possibility, maybe Mr. Zaya mentioned it, that they should discuss it among themselves in the parliament. And that's not a bad solution. If they can talk to each other directly, I think that should be the basis for finding
would be nice
agreement.
if they could talk to each other directly. But about the role of the EU, where is EU now after your mission?
Where is Commissioner Hahn?
Commissioner Hahn mysteriously disappeared, as well as the EU ambassador in Skopje. Where is EU?
Can I
Is
jump
there
in
any?
here?
Yes, please.
I will answer.
Yeah, please. Yeah, for the question
I think,
for all of you.
we have a very ambiguous situation after the last visits. Commissioner Hahn, in his farewell statement, when after 8 hours of discussions with the leaders, failed to reconcile this urge for early elections, because in the eyes of the governing party, early elections are saving the day, basically. And it's a line where they will be able to get rid of all the burden that all the burdens that the Persian agreement brought in the political landscape, the special prosecutor's office, all these negotiations. So for them, elections are, okay, it's done. On the other side, for the opposition, they focus on the quality of the elections and the preconditions. They threaten to boycott. So you have this tension between the two. And Hahn, when he left, he said, well, it's not only the elections. Refugee crisis is here, Macedonia is on the front line, European perspective is there. It's now up to the political parties. So he left it very ambiguous. The assessment that was done, that very clearly and explicitly stated that Macedonia is not ready to have credible elections, was a step in the right direction. What's missing now is this sense of, I think we're too comfortable now. I think we expect that somehow the political leaders that have put the house on fire will find a way to extinguish the fire left alone. And I think we really need a high-level engagement in this period between the last engagement, where we have delayed the elections, to push for some media reforms, to push the voters registry in Macedonia is a joke. People say the Macedonian voters registry is like an onion. The more you open it, the more you cry. 50 people in one address. It's notorious. It's notoriously manipulated. It's in the European Commission report. It's in Priebus report. It's in the wiretaps. I think it's too risky to leave Macedonia now, that somehow the leaders will find a way to work together on credible elections.
So do you agree that the impression is there is no EU anymore on the ground? And instead we have the two last important messages from the international community was delivered by the US ambassador alone.
It's not clear whether there will be another assessment. No one knows. Signals are, like the previous one, before June. Yeah. Signals are that there won't be. The Peter van Houten's process, the working groups of the parties, are not there. VMRO publicly denunciated him. There was lack of a proper protective response from Brussels. He is probably on his way out. There is no process at the moment. And no one knows, you know. And we live in this vague hope that somehow Macedonia will manage to do what itself in terms of preconditions for credible elections.
Mr. Kukam,
yes, where is EU? EU is very much present, even if you don't tangibly feel it. When we were there, it was really unfortunate. There was, you said that the American ambassador alone. EU ambassador, for family reasons, his mother underwent a very heavy surgery. She was not in the country at that time.
Thank you for explanation, then, because public opinion.
There was a chargé d'affaires, young, promising diplomat from Slovakia, but of course, ambassador should be there, I understand it. And concerning Mr. Hahn, he's very much behind all these activities, and you will see a lot of him in the future. Our visit there was also coordinated by him. So it was a matter of unhappy circumstances that it looked like that. I didn't like it myself, frankly. But what you are saying, it's really interesting that what you said, that now everybody expects Macedonians to resolve everything by themselves. That should be wrong. I think that we very much feel the co-responsibility, if you wish. It's our common project to prepare country for the future democratic development, and we don't resign from this responsibility. That's why behind the scenes I know that the Commission is active, is directly contacting our delegation there. And I think also the fact that we are coordinating and cooperating with the US was the silent agreement that it will be like that. And as Ivo Vajgel mentioned before, European Union will send the observers even well before the elections to follow the situation as it is. I only hope that the situation before the elections will not be exactly as it was before the 24th of April elections. And we all hope that although we cannot produce miracles, you mentioned the voters register, yes, also cross-checkings and the different sources of the records is really very difficult to reconcile completely, and maybe to implement all the necessary reforms, but for that, if we would like to wait for that, we can wait many years, maybe. So I think that I only comment on what you said. We feel the co-responsibility for that, and I think that process will show that we are there and EU will be engaged.
I would like
do you agree
to
that
add
we are
something
missing
to
the
this
more
also.
presence of EU right now, before the election?
I don't think that you should miss this presence. This presence should not be excessive. There was a continuous interest and presence of European Union in the form of working group of Van Houten. There were some other people involved, and there were us. There was. I strongly also not accept your criticism on the address of Commissioner Hahn. He really devoted to enhance the normal political dialogue and process.
I'm not criticizing Mr. Vajgel. I said that he mysteriously disappeared from the scene.
Listen, please. If you ask, then you have to listen to the answer. You know. And I don't think that Macedonia is a country under protection or under the surveillance. The politicians in Macedonia have to take their responsibility, and they have to take their responsibility to their voters. The voters have to take the responsibilities how they are casting their votes, whom they are supporting, and why they are supporting it. I know that the problem in Macedonia is very much in how media are presenting the political situation and the debates. There are very questionable, ethic of professional ethic there, and I wouldn't blame only journalists. The problem is the systemic problem. But I repeat. There is nothing but elections which bring the stability or the decision, democratic decision in a country who wants to be the member of European Union. I suggested that OSCE would, for instance, exert some pressure on the media and organize something which would give them a lead. What is the real role of media in the electoral process? We mentioned before that there will be quite a massive presence of observers. United States will also send their observers. ODIHR will be there. So there will be a lot of international surveillance and presence. I would not say, and I don't accept that Macedonia is now abandoned and and that we got rid of our own responsibility.
Maybe just for the end, because we are finishing our program, we didn't have time to talk about anything what Mr. Vajgel mentioned, huge challenges inside interethnic, multi-ethnic society and difficult environment, name issue with Greece, and refugee crisis. EU is now putting up its forces on the Macedonian border. And
I'll make only 2 points. One is in terms of the need of the international engagement. The nature of Persian agreement is such that one of the goals is to dismantle the authoritarian hold over the state apparatus. According to Pribe, there is an authoritarian hold. It is not in the interest of the ruling party to do that voluntarily. And that's why for Persian to deliver on that goal, we need continuous daily pressure by the citizens at home and by the international community that is interested to help Macedonia. We cannot expect another similarly rigged elections to resolve the deep institutional crisis that started in part by electoral fraud. We need to dismantle the system and take out the systemic advantage of the ruling party. For that, we need the international community. And the second point, very briefly, both geography, Macedonia is on the front line of the refugee crisis, and demography, and I will recall the incident in Kumanovo in May last year, which should still be a wake-up call. When institutions are weak, Macedonia is most vulnerable on the interethnic relations. Both those direct in the same point, in the same direction. Engagement is needed, and I don't think left alone we will make it. We need that help.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Poštovani gledatelji, pratili ste još jednu emisiju Balkana u Europi. Hvala vam što ste bili s nama. Srdačan pozdrav.
Pozdrav.